All offseason, we've been talking about it, but I'm here to tell you when you get ready for the 2026 Georgia football season, why you shouldn't be worried about the wide receivers.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Bulldogs podcast make every moment more over at FanDuel. More on them in a moment. Clint and I, listen, the 2026 season is almost here. Week 0 is this weekend. Georgia plays in less than 9 days. Some of you may be listening to this. It may be a week before the game. It's right around the corner. Clint and I are giving our last minute final thoughts on all the major position groups on the Georgia roster. So yesterday's episode, we talked about the backfield. So we talked about the running backs and the quarterbacks on the offense. Today, we're talking about the pass catchers on this Georgia offense. That'd be the wide receivers and the tight ends. And tomorrow, we'll talk about the offensive line. Next week, we'll talk about the defense, giving our last thoughts, our final predictions, our last little bit of insight before we get into actual game coverage. If you're here, so happy to have you. And thanks for listening. Thanks for making us part of your daily routine. We got so many kind emails from so many of you this offseason about how you listen every day on the way to work, or you listen while you're at the gym, or it's part of your regular routine, or you watch on YouTube. All those things really help us out a bunch. If you love the show and you appreciate what Clint and I are doing, between thebanter.beehive.com, we've been saying it for the last few weeks, but we put out a free newsletter each and every week. We're going to continue that throughout the season. We're going to have our locks as a part of that newsletter. And so lots of content coming at you there. You can sign up absolutely free. Between thebanter.beehive.com, weekly newsletter goes out there. You get some bonus stuff from us. You can get all that kind of good stuff over there. So make sure that you are a part of that. Let's jump into the pass catchers. I'm going to start with the wide receivers. You think I'm going to start with the tight ends because of how much I love the tight ends? But no, I'm not. I'm going to start with the wide receivers. And I teased in the open, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't be that worried about the Georgia wide receivers. Now, listen, are the Georgia wide receivers largely an unproven group? Yes, they are. But not as unproven as you think. London Humphreys, obviously a lot of college experience and has been a productive wide receiver for the University of Georgia. Talon Taylor was a fairly well-experienced and often utilized wide receiver for a true freshman last year. He's coming back as well. You combine that with a guy like Isaiah Canyon, who does have a lot of significant experience. Georgia's got some guys that have been there before. They're also very talented, and they're very deep. I want to talk about a couple of guys, a couple of those guys that I just mentioned, though, who in particular I think are the reason you don't need to worry about this Georgia wide receiving corps. Number one is Talon Taylor. This is a true elite talent at the wide receiver position. Now, not all 5 stars pan out. Not all of them hit. Not all of them are everything that they're hyped up to be coming out of high school. That's the case at every position. It's no different at wide receiver. But Talon Taylor's got all of the tools. He's got he's got the route running. He's got the speed. He's got the athleticism. He's got the hands. He's a very polished and gifted wide receiver coming out of high school. Georgia is going to be able to utilize him. I think a lot of people assume in the slot, but I actually think you're going to see Talon Taylor slide outside a lot more and play in one of those outside wide receiver positions. I think he's got the ability to stretch the field vertically. I think he's got the ability to get behind the defense. I think he's got the ability to soften things up for the run game. And I think he's developed and become more physical as a run blocker, more physical at the point of attack, perimeter blocking, maybe on a design that doesn't necessarily involve him out in the pattern, but where we're running a little bubble with maybe a big tight end. We'll get to that in a little bit. On the perimeter, you can run that to Talon Taylor's side. He's a physical kid, and he's got great hands. And I think everybody remembers Talon Taylor from his freshman year for the big drop against Alabama, right? Hit him in the hands. Georgia would have won the football game. It was a costly mistake. A beautiful throw from Gunnar Stockton. But we've been saying it all offseason. Let's not forget that in, what was it, the fourth game of his college career against Alabama, Talon Taylor, in the second half, late in a game, was not only on the field, but was beating his guy. Do you remember? I mean, pretty good secondary for Alabama, all things considered last year. Beating his guy behind the defense, wide open, and having his number called by Mike Bobo and Gunnar Stockton. It points to his preparedness. It points to how polished and gifted he is as a football player. I think Talon Taylor's the real deal. Now, the other guy that I would mention in the wide receiver core is Isaiah Canyon. This was Georgia Tech's true deep threat last year. Now, he's not the leading receiver on Georgia Tech's team, but he was the guy that they went over the top with in that Buster Faulkner offense with Haynes King. Obviously, that offense was fairly successful, had a really good season. Everybody left the flats of Georgia Tech, which, by the way, Georgia Tech might be bad this year, like bad. But that's a discussion for a different time. Isaiah Canyon comes over to Georgia. What does Georgia need out of this wide receiving core? Especially when you're so gifted at running back, you're so gifted at tight end. What is the one thing that you would say, okay, well, this wide receiving core for Georgia, what they need to do is this. It's not be Zachariah Branch. See, everybody's talking about how can we replace Zachariah Branch? No. We're replacing Zachariah Branch with more carries for Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens and Dwight Phillips and Bo Walker. That's how we're replacing Zachariah Branch. We're replacing Zachariah Branch with Jaden Riddell and Ethan Barber and Lawson Lucky and Caden Prothro and Elias Williams. That's how we're replacing Zachariah Branch. That's going to control the short, quick, easy access extension of the run game type of throws. Georgia's set there. They don't need a Zachariah Branch. And plus, they got a lot of really talented, very shifty, mobile receivers. What this Georgia wide receiving core needs is a true vertical threat. And listen, that's what they didn't have all year last year, even with Zachariah Branch. What they need is a guy like A.D. Mitchell was for this Georgia team, a guy like George Pickens was for this Georgia team, a guy like even Brock Bowers was how Brock Bowers was utilized, how Ladd McConkey was utilized often for this Georgia team. A guy that can get behind the defense, stretch the field vertically, move the ball down the field in large chunks, and like I said, soften up that secondary so that Georgia and the best offensive line in the country can continue to lean on people play after play. That's who I think Isaiah Canyon is. I'll have more that I want to say specifically about Isaiah Canyon and his role on this team. But first, these. And these are our friends over at Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent on searching and more time gets spent on finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now, even as we speak. In the 1 minute that it takes me to do this ad read, companies just like yours will have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Listen, we all know that in college football, it's about the right fit. When you bring in a transfer like Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, it's about does he fit the system? Not just is he a good player, not just did he have a lot of stars attached to his name, but is he the best fit for the system? Does he fill the need that the organization has? That's what Indeed is all about. They're trying to connect the right people to the right companies. And so you can be sure that you are hiring the best candidates in less time and less effort. That's less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through all the chaos, that's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status that it deserves right now at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it, Indeed, on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. But that's not all. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at Poncho. Listen, Poncho is the ultimate game day fit. Clint and I have a closet full of these things. We absolutely love them. Let me tell you why we love them. They are clean, sharp. They are a game day performance shirt that actually looks like something that you would want to wear. You rep your team in style with Poncho. The best part is it's built for real life. Super lightweight, breathable, comfortable, enough so that you can throw it on for a full day of tailgating, sitting at the stadium, walking around Athens, or just hanging out on your back porch watching the game with your friends without ever feeling like you need to change because you've already sweat through your shirt. What I really like is you're not stuck in a one-size-fits-all situation. You can dial in the fit with regular, slim, tall, plus they have short or long sleeves. And if you grab your team shirt between August 2nd and September the 7th, you're covered by Poncho's Natty Bag Guarantee. If your team wins the college football playoff national championship, Poncho will give you a full refund on your purchase, and you keep the shirt. These shirts are fantastic. The collar is perfect. If you've ever worn a button-up collared shirt, you know exactly what I'm talking about, guys. The collar is absolutely perfect. They're lightweight. They're breathable. They look great. They are fantastic shirts. Clint and I both love them. Go to ponchooutdoors.com/lockedon and enter your email to get $10 off and free shipping on your first order. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/lockedon. Head there, drop in your email, and get $10 off and free shipping. Once you try one, you'll know why we have a closet full. So we bring in Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech. I think a lot of people kind of rolled their eyes at that. They said, Georgia Tech, what did he do? And then you go and the stat hunters just go and they look for his numbers, right? They just go and they quickly scan the Georgia Tech, page on ESPN.com, and they look at his season-long numbers, and they say to themselves like, well, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that Isaiah Canyon was all that productive as a wide receiver at Georgia Tech. That's lazy work because it's not how many times he caught the ball. It's how was he utilized in that offense? How did Georgia Tech use him? What were the specific areas that they felt like he was gifted in? And then does that necessarily translate to Georgia this season in terms of our needs and where we have particular weaknesses on this team? If you look at the top wide receivers on this team, right? You bring back London Humphrey. You have Sokovie White, who I think is going to step in and emerge as a true weapon this year. You have the aforementioned Talon Taylor. You have C.J. Wiley, who is young but unproven. And then you get into some really young guys that don't have a lot of experience. The Landon Roldens, the Craig Dandridges, the Black Shears, like the Tyler Williams. Are we going to be able to get something out of these guys? We don't know. But if you just look across the board, C.J. Wiley and Isaiah Canyon are really the only two big, tall, long wide receivers that have the capability of stretching the field vertically over the top. C.J. Wiley was not able to kind of work his way onto the field in terms of being very productive last year for Georgia. Isaiah Canyon 1 year older than CJ Wiley. In year 3, he was much more effective for that Georgia Tech offense. And so you bring him in to either push CJ Wiley so that CJ Wiley emerges, or you bring him in to complement CJ Wiley and be a go-to down the field option for this Georgia wide receiving core. I think what Isaiah Canyon does is very specific and is going to be very helpful for this Georgia football team this year. So I think it was a fantastic get in the offseason. I think it was a big-time pull from the transfer portal. Kirby is calculated in the way that he goes after portal guys. And you bring in a guy like Isaiah Canyon. You return a guy like London Humphreys, who I think is very underrated. You return a guy like Talon Taylor, who's just beginning to emerge as a true weapon. Guys, this wide receiving core is fine. And do you know why they're really fine? Because they're the third most important skill position group on the offense, and that's not a way of knocking them. That's simply a way of indicating to you that the running backs, who we already spoke about, and we expect this Georgia team, again, if you missed yesterday's episode, go back and listen. We expect this Georgia team to lead the SEC in rushing this year. Full stop. Both Clint and I think there will be 2 1,000-yard rushers on this team, and we disagree about who the second one is. That's how talented the backfield is at Georgia. So you combine the offensive line, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, with the most talented backfield that Georgia has had top to bottom since Nick and Sony. I'm not saying they are Nick and Sony. I'm saying that since Nick and Sony, this is the most talented backfield we've had. And you combine that with what we're going to talk about in the third segment, which is the best tight end room that Georgia has ever assembled. Hear what I said, not what I didn't say. The best tight end room that Georgia has ever assembled. This wide receiving group just needs to be fine. And I think they have a chance to be a lot more than fine this year. I'm going to come back. I'm going to defend. People are up in arms. Could the tight ends possibly be as good as I have hyped them up to be this offseason? We'll see. First, these. And these are our friends over at FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a home run today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. You just make your pick for free of who you think will hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll get a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team, like the Braves, who are in a dogfight, but I believe are going to win the division some way, somehow. There are Georgia-based Phillies fans who are sending us emails, and we love you as a Georgia fan, but we ask you to kindly step away from us when we're talking about baseball. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now is your chance to make a prediction before first pitch. Is it going to be Matt Olson? Is it going to be Ozzie Albies? Is it going to be Mauricio Dubon, who's turned into one of the Braves' best hitters? Make your pick. Place it in the app. If you get it right, you get a free profit boost to use on your next bet. So you ready to play the game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick of who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, the official partner of the MLB. We don't have Brock Bowers, guys. There will never, again, ever, never, ever be another Brock Bowers. There will never be another Nick Chubb. Never. They don't make people like that anymore, who will just step in and immediately make you forget about everybody you've ever watched at the position and say, this is the most transcendent football player I've ever seen in my entire life. Brock Bowers didn't even play football his senior year of high school because he lived in California and it was 2020 and they canceled the whole season. He only played 3 years of high school football. When he got to campus at Georgia, he hadn't played, but when he took a snap in his first game, he hadn't played football in like 21 months. And he was electric, elite, right from the jump. There are no more Brock Bowers. That's not what I'm saying. But there has never, even remotely, been a tight end room. You tell me who the 5th best tight end in this room is. You tell me who the 5th best tight end is. This is how I'm going to prove my point. If you were sitting here, you tell me who the 5th best tight end in the room is. Okay? There are a handful of people who will look at this tight end roster and they will look at it and they will say, the 5th best tight end is probably Caden Prothro because he's a true freshman. He's unproven. Friends, there is a very good chance Caden Prothro doesn't lead the tight ends in receiving this year. There's a very good chance that Caden Prothro leads the Georgia football team in receiving this year. There's a very good chance that Caden Prothro starts week 1. And we see him every week. Certain packages, he won't be on the field all the time. All 5 of these guys are going to play. You can't put them all on the field at the same time, although I pray to God at least one time we see it. Why not, Mike Bobo? Grow a pair and put all 5 of them on the field at one time for us. One time. It can't be Caden Prothro. He can't be the 5th best. There are people who are going to look at it and they're going to say that Ethan Barber is the 5th best tight end. He's probably going to have the 5th best stats of all the tight ends after this year. Ethan Barber started as a true freshman in his first game. Ethan Barber will start this year in game 1. It's a lock. I say Caden Prothro might be out there on the first snap. That's if we have 3 tight ends on the field. Because Ethan Barber and Lawson Lucky are starting week 1, period. What he brings, the physicality that he brings to the run game, offensive line, the toughness that he plays with, the fact that he came back and played at the end of the season last year after the horrific injury that he sustained. There are people who are going to say Elias Williams maybe is the 5th best tight end on this team. Okay. Is that really? That's really what you want to hitch your wagon to. This monster of a man. A guy that Gunnar Stockton, now he didn't connect on a bunch of them, but a guy that as part of the offense last year was, let's throw fade balls to Elias Williams. By the way, as a true freshman, let's get him out on the perimeter and let's just throw back shoulders to Elias Williams. If you don't think that's going to be a part of this Georgia offense, I'm sorry. So who's the 5th best tight end on the roster? Well, maybe it's Jaden Riddell. Oh. Did you watch G-Day? Have you been paying attention? I wonder why Jaden Riddell didn't transfer. Considering he could have started at 15 other SEC schools, that's not an exaggeration. Considering he could have started at 137 other universities across the country, that's not an exaggeration. Maybe he's the 5th best tight end on this roster. He's a pretty good one. Maybe the 5th best tight end is Lawson Lucky, who's the most experienced, most prolific tight end, who scored 3 touchdowns against Ole Miss in a very meaningful, very important football game in Athens last year that involved Clint and a man in a white hat. If you can't tell me definitively who the 5th best player is at any position, that position is, full stop, loaded to a ridiculous extent with talent. Right? Do you see my logic here? All 5 of these guys are good enough to play every snap of the 2026 season. And we talk about this a lot with running backs. We talk about this a lot with defensive linemen. We talk about this a lot with a lot of other positions. But think about the advantage that Georgia's going to have in the fourth quarter when they're trying to win a football game. And either A, they're behind and they need to come back and score in the fourth quarter. Think about the advantage to having 2 or 3 very fresh tight ends in the game, going up against linebackers, safeties, corners, who are trying desperately to cover them on tired legs after playing almost every snap of the game. Or scenario B, late in the fourth quarter, Georgia has a narrow lead in a game and they're trying to salt it away. Think about the advantage of having Ethan Barber having only played 10 snaps in the game. And he's the best run blocking tight end in college football. And he lines up across from a defensive end who is heaving, sucking wind, and just punches him in the mouth over and over and over again as Georgia moves the ball down the field, salts the clock away, and wins the football game. None of these guys are going to have to play more than 10, 15 snaps a game. And all of them are going to get opportunities to do something. Now, none of them are going to be statistical monsters because of that. But I don't think there's going to be any statistical monsters receiving the football. I don't think Isaiah Canyon's going to be a statistical monster. I think Isaiah Canyon's best plays are going to be running deep, running a deep route, getting a safety to move backwards to help out with him, and Georgia throwing it underneath to Caden Prothro, who now has a lot of green grass in front of him because the linebacker that was trying to cover him cannot do it. Those are going to be the kind of impact plays that I think our receivers and pass catchers are going to make. Here's my point. This Georgia tight end room, they're going to live up to the hype. I would say I'd be shocked if they don't. They won't fail to do it. They will live up to the hype. They're not going to win the Heisman Trophy. They're not going to be Brock Bowers. I don't think. You might see 1 or 2 of them emerge and receive for 800 yards each. You might see that. I think it's going to be spread out. But when you look at total production from tight ends, I'm just here to tell you, total production from tight ends, this will be the most Georgia has ever had in the history of its football program by a lot. Full stop. Most productive tight end room in the history of Georgia football from a passing perspective. And that doesn't even account for what they're going to do in what I think will be a run game that will lead the SEC in rushing. I'm Daniel. Clint's not here. Make sure that you're subscribed every single day for the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. And if you enjoy the banter, get to betweenthebanter.beehive.com. That's BEEHIIV, betweenthebanter.beehive.com. If you're still listening right now to this podcast, surely you're already subscribed to the newsletter. I know a bunch of you are. If you're not, get over there now and make sure that you don't miss anything that Clint and I are putting out. We will see you guys next time.